Destruction, the quintessential school of magic. It's the one everyone thinks of when they think, I want to do some magic. Yes, you want to throw fireballs and lightning at your enemies, unlimited power and all that. Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Caladelph's School of Magical Studies and Theory. I am Caladelph, your instructor, and today I'm going to be teaching you the basics of the magical school of destruction. Now hold on just 1 minute. Before you go off and try to incinerate a Nyx hound or something, I need to teach you a little theory. You need to understand destruction before you can do destruction. The destruction skill is governed by the willpower attribute, meaning that leveling up your destruction skill will allow you to increase your willpower the next time you level up. A high willpower will also make your spells slightly more effective and will allow you to train your destruction skill to a higher level. Remember, you can only train a skill by paying for training as high as its governing attribute. This means you could only train your destruction up to 40 if your willpower is 40. You can, however, increase your destruction skill by using destruction spells even above 40 in this example. Your skill in destruction will level up as you successfully cast a spell. In other words, it doesn't matter if your spell actually hits its target. As long as you can successfully cast a spell, your skill in destruction will go up. Destruction can be basically described as the school of magic used to deal damage to an opponent. There are a variety of ways to classify the different spells of destruction, and it may be helpful to do so in order to better understand them. We'll call the first category method of delivery. Most destruction spells can either be delivered via touch or from a distance, also known as on target. The differences may seem pretty straightforward, but let's dive in a little more. Spells that are delivered by touch obviously require you to be close and personal with your target, making you vulnerable to melee attacks of various forms. However, touch spells are much cheaper to cast, costing less magicka than ranged spells. Therefore, in theory, you can craft a stronger on-touch spell than you could craft a ranged spell, or craft the same spell but have it cost less magicka and also less gold. Here's an example. Let's say a slightly above average destruction wizard having the skill of 63 and wanting to do fire damage on an opponent, 10 points instantly. He or she would have to spend 5 points of magicka to do so on touch versus 7 points of magicka to do it at range. However, the benefits of ranged attacks is that you can keep your distance. Mages and wizards are not known for wearing heavy armor or having a lot of health, so keeping your distance from an opponent may be a very useful and important thing. You'll have to do a cost-benefit analysis of whether on touch or on target is right for your particular spell. We can further classify destruction spells by duration. You can think of this as the method of impact. Spells can either have their effect take effect immediately or over time. For example, you can do 10 points of fire damage on an opponent as soon as the spell makes contact, or you can do 1 point of fire damage for 10 seconds. The effect will be the same, of course, 10 points of fire damage, but whether it impacts the enemy immediately or does so over time is the difference. Now you may be asking yourself, why would you ever want to do damage over time as opposed to immediately? Well, think of a scenario where you need to do damage to someone but you don't want to engage them in battle directly because they are stronger than you. Imagine you can do enough damage to them to kill them, but you want to do so from a distance and then run away and just wait for them to die. It could be useful in a scenario like that. It's important to note that a 10 point of instant damage spell and a 1 point of damage for 10 second spell will have the exact same magical cost. So it really just depends on what you're looking for in a spell. Another important note on impact is the size of the area of effect of a spell. A spell's effect can have a very concentrated effect, only taking place at the exact location it touches, or it can have a large effect. For example, a simple fireball on target with no area of effect would cause damage to the target if it hit and only the target. However, a similar fireball on target with an area of effect of 10 feet would create an explosion of 10 feet around the exact location the spell hits. Keep in mind two things when looking at area of effect. First, it can be useful if your target is looking to bob and weave, attempting to dodge your spell. If you have a large enough AoE, area of effect, you don't need to hit your target directly. However, any area of effect runs the risk of hitting someone else, meaning that if you're only looking to damage one target, you need to be aware of standers by. Well, then again, if you're trying to hit many targets at once, AoE is the way to go. Keep in mind that the larger the area of effect, the more magicka the spell will take to cast. Alright, now it's time to take a look at the spells themselves. Again, we can break them down into somewhat useful categories. First, there are the damage spells. The damage branch of destruction is involved with the permanent reduction of a particular attribute. For example, a damage health 10 points on target would permanently reduce the target's health by 10 points. This means that if a foe has a health of 100, their health would be permanently reduced to 90. That would be their new maximum. Healing potions would only heal such an individual to 90. A damage endurance spell would have the same effect but for endurance. Because endurance is an attribute that governs various skills, those skills would also be affected. So, for example, being hit with a damage endurance spell would make it so your threshold for being able to train heavy armor would be reduced. Endurance also governs your maximum health, so leveling up while having your endurance in a damaged state would reduce the amount of points your health would increase on the level up. As you can see, damaging an attribute can have devastating effects. The only way to reverse a damage spell is to use a restore attribute spell, either by potion or other means. Second, we have the drain spells. The drain branch of destruction deals with the temporary lowering of a target's attributes. This is obviously less long-term damaging to the target, but still useful. For example, draining someone's strength by enough points would make them over-encumbered, meaning that you would be able to make a quick escape if you're in a tight spot. You can even drain someone's skill with a particular weapon. For example, draining a sword fighter's long blade skill could render even a renowned fighter skill almost useless. A very handy set of spells indeed. Third, we're going to talk about the one everyone is probably most interested in, the elemental damage spells. The three elements you can harness to deal damage to a foe are fire, shock, and frost. Poison, though technically not an element, still falls into this category. There's not really much to say about these spells. Obviously, they deal elemental damage to your foe. You do need to be aware of your target's elemental resistances, however. For example, casting a shock spell on a storm Atronach may very well get you killed. Likewise, you wouldn't want to cast a fireball against a Dunmer who have a natural resistance to fire. In the event you face a foe with elemental resistances, it would actually be recommended to use a damage health spell. Damage spells are elementally neutral, meaning that unless your opponent has a resistance to magicka, the damage will hit for full effect every time. Damage spells do cost more to cast than elemental spells, so there is of course that drawback. However, it would be useful to keep a damage spell in your repertoire in case you only have a frost spell and you come across a Nord. Nords are 100% resistance to frost damage. Next, we'll talk about the weakness to elements. Weakness spells will make your target take more damage from a particular element. For example, casting weakness to frost against a Nord would make them not be 100% resistance to frost anymore. The weakness to a particular element is percentage based, so in theory, casting a weakness to fire on a foe for 100% for 10 seconds would mean that they would take double damage to fire spells for the 10-second spell duration. There's also the weakness to magicka, which makes a target take more damage from your damage spells, such as damage health, and your drain spells, such as drain fatigue. Do take note that weakness to magicka does not make your target more susceptible to elemental damage. That's what the weakness to element spells are for. Weakness to magicka will also increase the spell effects from other schools, such as Burden, which is an alteration school spell, or Charm, an illusion school spell, just as two examples. Finally, weakness to common disease exists, but honestly, it doesn't have many gameplay uses. Casting weakness to common disease on an NPC would probably not serve any purpose unless the NPC happens to get attacked by a diseased creature, which would then really serve no purpose other than just having the NPC diseased. However, if you happen to want to say, I don't know, catch porphyric hemophilia, and you happen to have 100% disease resistance, well, it may be useful to cast it on yourself. Notwithstanding that last and very dubious use, Kaladolf does not recommend you waste your time learning this spell. Finally, we will discuss the disintegrate spells. Disintegrate spells come in two flavors, armor and weapon. Each does a certain amount of damage to either an equipped weapon or piece of armor for the amount of time of the duration of the spell. In terms of weapon, the weapon will only be damaged if equipped and drawn. As for armor, they will be damaged if being worn in the following order: shield, cuirass, left and right pauldron, left and right gauntlet, helm, greaves, and boots. Now, why would you want to damage someone's gear instead of just killing them? Well, there may be a use for this, but honestly, it just seems like an inconvenience. Of note, the Minor Daedra Hungers use this spell regularly, so be sure to check your equipment's condition after encountering one. Alright, right about now you may be wondering to yourself, what can I do with this knowledge? What can destruction do for me? Well, aside from self-defense, I'm guessing you're looking to take this degree you get from Kaladolf School of Magical Studies and Theory and make money. Well, you're in luck. Unlike a useless degree like Argonian Studies or Sload Soap Making, learning destruction can get you real-life employment opportunities. Getting your major in destruction will allow you to land the following professions: Battle Mage, Crusader, Mage, Sorcerer, and Spell Sword. Now, if you're only looking to minor in destruction, you can still go into the Nightblade class. Of course, having a high destruction skill will allow you to move high in the ranks of both the Mages Guild and House Talvani, both of which value members with a high destruction skill. And finally, let's take a look at ways you can increase your destruction skill other than electrocuting someone. Serene Relis, who lives in Tel Brenora, Error Darothril in Dirty Muriel's Corner Club, and Adarume at the Gateway Inn, who are both in Sadrith Mora, can train you up to level 81. The master trainer in destruction is one Lelis Birian, a Breton woman who can be found wandering around in the Ascadian Isles region, not far from Pirnet Beluel's farmhouse. And if you want to read up on your destruction skill, be sure to pick up the following books next time you're in Jobash's Rare Books. The Horror of Castle Zur, Response to Barrow's Speech, A Hypothetical Treachery, The Art of War Magic, and The Mystery of Talara Part 3. And there you have it, students. You have now graduated from Destruction 101 from Kaladalf School of Magical Studies and Theory. You now have the basic knowledge required to go out there and do some destruction upon your foes, or cliff racers. Although I guess it could count as foes too, the blighters. If you think I've missed anything, please leave me a comment in the suggestions box on your way out, although I expect to find that empty. After all, I am Kaladalf, not some Breton hedge wizard from Calmlorn. I'm sure all of you will leave this class a positive review. Please join me next semester as we go over a different school of magic. But for now, I wish you all health and safety as you travel the Isle of Vardenfell. Good day.